Paula, if you can, oh my gosh, you're on it, girl. Okay, welcome to our all faculty meeting. You should have gotten the agenda. There's two big items on the agenda that the Dean's Council and those of us have been working on these two different ideas would really like some feedback from the faculty writ large. So we'll use most of the time to talk about those two things. But I wanted to start with introductions. So if you could, I'm pretty sure we're pretty well known with each other, but if we can just do sort of a quick name, where you are, what you do at Future Generations, and if you can show us your mask, if it's handy, that would be very cool. So Paula, you're first on my list.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Paula. I work with Kelly on the learning management team at Future Generations, and here is my mask.
Daniel, you're next.
Hi, everybody. You all know me well, but this faculty meeting is actually very important because some of the issues that we're going to be talking about will be looked at very carefully by HLC when we next come up for accreditation. So it's really important, but this is a particularly important meeting vis-a-vis our reauthorization of accreditation in 2024, given some of the items that are on this agenda.
And that was your mask. Good job. Andrea?
Sorry, I don't have time to run down and get my mask, but
That's okay.
she won't always join our calls either, but I am Andrea. This is Coraline, and I am teaching the Strategic Communication course, PSK 604.
And you're in Minneapolis.
And I'm in Minneapolis. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Chris.
So hi, I am not newly anymore, but on board. We're working with Kelly and Paula on student affairs, doing registrar stuff. I actually have an assortment of masks here. These two are things that my wife bought on Etsy. This one is a little thick, kind of hot for the summer. This one fits kind of nicely because it's got a big thing for my chin, but when you put it on, it sucks up in my nostrils, so that's not that comfortable. This is one that a friend made, which is not bad. And then these two I got at Bed Bath & Beyond, which are actually my favorite because they have little adjustable things here for my big ears. So I got two of those. So I plus, if I really feel like it, I could take any of my family's masks, and they've all got a bunch too.
Great. Laura, you're next on my list. Just hi and where you are, and if you have your mask handy, show that off. Oh.
Okay, you're talking
Awesome.
to me. Hi,
yep.
Everybody. In Peru, we have a serious situation here with the pandemic. I don't have my mask handy. It's in quarantine right now. I read it the other day. But actually I don't go out very much, so I really don't need it that much. I usually use it if I have to have somebody who comes to the house, to the apartment. So I did get one very nice black one. It has a little design on it. So anyway, and so that's about it. Nice to see everybody.
Great. Yeah. Best to just not have to go out. I agree. Luke?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Luke. I'm teaching ACC 601, and obviously, don't forget it's an election year.
Awesome. Oliver?
Hey, mine's just a kind of a standard mask. I'm in Baltimore. We just have a stash of these that are in different pockets and stuff of pants as I find them, but they work. I'm doing instruction. What am I doing, Kelly? I'm helping.
You're an instructional designer.
Yes, that's me.
Thanks. Rosie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rosie. I'm on the development team, of course, and this semester I'm also a TA for ACC 601. And this is my mask. I wish it was prettier, but it's nice. And I'm currently on day 6 of 14 quarantining in El Salvador, our new home.
Whoop, whoop. And Ruben, you're last on my list, but please.
Okay, good morning. Ruben from Uruguay. Beautiful spring weather today, although I need to wait for 45 more days for the spring. I am not in this meeting as faculty member. I am now a student, so I sort of spy in this meeting. I don't use mask here at home, but I have this. I don't know if it works or not.
It's supposed to cover your face, Ruben. Oh, well. Okay.
Ruben lives in Uruguay, so they don't have the pandemic down there because they have good national policies.
Only yesterday, we have only 35 people died, which is very low from the very beginning of the pandemic.
Great. Okay, I'll put my video back on. So thank you all for doing that. I just wanted to do that one so that we could all do introductions, but also to show you that it is important in a hybrid learning environment to really build any opportunities you can to engage with your students. So some of that is engaging through building rapport, through acknowledging that students have lives that are outside of the 1 hour Zoom time that you have with them. All of these little things that you do to make people, make your students feel that they're being listened to is really a valuable part of being a good instructor in a hybrid learning environment. So I always say that, you know, try as much as you can to be your authentic self, both in your Zoom sessions and, you know, through your written emails and even on your Moodle page. Some amount of that, you know, humanizing of what can sometimes feel very automated is very important and shows in the literature that it does mean a lot to students. And the other side of that is if you seem present, students will assume that you're present. So it might actually save you on the back end if in the beginning of the semester you're very active on the boards and you're very innovative in your approach to reaching out to them. So and in closing that was my little mini lecture on hybrid learning environments. So as you can see, I'm trying to model good Zoom class time environment and being very explicit about that, which you don't have to be this explicit. Anyway, okay, so I just want to check that everybody sort of has the agenda close by. As Daniel said, especially this first item, number 2, alternative admissions or admissions by proof of performance. This is something the Dean's Council really wants faculty support or questions and that sort of thing. What I'll do is I will there are obviously quite a few faculty that aren't present. They will be joining us asynchronously. So I will send this recording with your comments and give them an opportunity to also comment via a different method. So, so that was, and everybody seemed to get the Google Calendar, I think, because that's why we all showed up. So that's good. Did anybody have trouble with any of those things, except Rosie? Okay, so the other sort of housekeeping thing I wanted to say was, if you want to make a comment, ideally you either put up your hand icon in the participant list or type in hand or I have a comment in the chat, and Paula and I will try to stay on top of that. So there's not as many people here as I was sort of planning for, so I think it'll go a little more smoothly, but that is, again, a good practice to get into so people don't feel like they're having a hard time making a comment, especially when we don't use video, right? Because I think it's a little easier with video because you can kind of see if people are looking like they want to say something, but when people have to turn their videos off because of bandwidth issues, then it becomes a little more tricky. Okay, so Daniel, is there anything you would like to say about this?
Yes, thank you very much. I will propose a amendment to the formal policy that has been brought forward because it's important for the Higher Learning Commission. A change such as this should not be brought forward from the president or from the Board of Trustees. There's a typographical error, which is actually the type of thing that HLC gets worked up on. We do not have a Board of Directors, we have a Board of Trustees. And it is actually a fairly big difference in that. It's not just a simple word. So all of us should be aware of the difference between a Board of Directors and a Board of Trustees. A Board of Trustees is looking out for the trust of the institution, the commission, and a Board of Directors is implementing the mission, so that there's a different expectation in the roles. So I would suggest a change in the wording on this alternate track, which is critical for later inspection by the Higher Learning Commission. The faculty, after study of course evidence, and then cut out president, CEO, and decided the faculty, after the study of course evidence, to more fully pursue its mission of helping the most marginalized students. The university should then continue the experiment with a process of admissions to the master's degree. Will be much more acceptable than to think that the board and the president is mandating this. So I just want to clarify. Beyond that, I'm totally in support, but if the document can be corrected so that the official record of this meeting, which, as I said at the beginning, is really important, needs to have that adjustment in the document.
Yep, okay, can do that.
I can show on my screen if you want to. I've made the changes in my document, but it's a minor thing, but actually it's a big thing.
Yeah, we'll work on that. We're just trying to track it because this is the document that is in the Dean's Council at the moment. So we need to move it. We need to change it. We need to change it in a couple of places if it is indeed in typo. So I guess, yeah, how do people feel about this? I mean, this was an idea that we've sort of been floating around, comes from a lot of different places. One, we're not really sure. Some places have very spotty track records when it comes to if someone has a bachelor's degree or not. Having a bachelor's degree doesn't really mean that you're going to be more successful in our program or not. We as the Dean's Council thought that having to take 4 of our courses and have to do well, I think it's not even a pass, right, Chris? It's like a B. Yeah, B or better.
A B or better.
Really kind of says you're pretty serious about this whole applied community development thing. So I really feel this was a robust policy that we wrote. I think there are some places that it gets a little tricky. The master's programs are usually based off of bachelor's level work. And so we're kind of changing that dynamic. So I don't know. I would love to hear how people feel about it.
Well, I guess what I would say is I think there is some question about, this is certainly one instance where this is a useful mechanism to allow an alternative form of entry, but I don't think it's necessarily the only reason to do it. I think actually, by and large, several things. One, we want to make sure not to structure it so that it seems bogged down, like you have to. I mean, that this would be a qualification if you don't have a undergrad, but certainly somebody coming in with a good undergrad transcript who says, look, I just want to apply. There's some reasons, at least for our American students, they need to have an entry to just begin a full master's program to fully utilize Title I funding, or Title IV funding, I mean. But so I think that is just something else to keep in mind. But I think even more to the point, as we are kind of seeing with some of the interest in the 601 course, is that, you know, a lot of people, and even the nature of our degree, a lot of people, presumably, it's not the most normal field to go get a master's degree in. And I could see, we already can see a lot of people have a master's degree wanting to get this type of specialized education. And there are an increasing number of people who aren't seeing or saying, well, if I go get, say, something like a graduate certificate, maybe I don't want to bite off the full master's degree. And I certainly know when I was recruiting for the master's program, we were regularly asked for things like this. And they were framed around the idea of, you know, a graceful exit for someone who gets involved and just has too many life commitments. We've certainly been asked about, isn't there a way to take some of these very clear courses that I would want? So I think that when this alternative admissions or certificate kind of pairing track has come up, we tend to maybe look at, you know, certainly one application of it would be the person who doesn't have the undergrad. I think it also raises the hair on people's necks a little bit unfairly when we act like that's the only reason we're doing it. Because I think, to my mind, the reason to do it for an American audience or and even for the mid-learner audience is I think we'll get more students. And by that, I mean the certificate students that will just never do, you know, and that having two products to sell is going to be better than one.
Yeah, and I think tell me if I'm wrong, Daniel, I think the fact that we can offer a professional certificate, we can do that with this policy isn't about that. That already exists and people can get a certificate. No one's gotten one yet, but we're getting there. Or a graduate certificate. This is really about trying to make sure we jump through the hoops from an accreditation point of view, so that if someone is interested in getting into our master's program and wants an avenue that doesn't require a master's degree and a letter of recommendation and a transcript, that there is an alternative track.
Right. I mean, exists. I mean, I totally agree with Kelly. There is another way of getting into programs that many universities, if you've been out in the workplace, give you, you know, experience credits. You know, you've got 20 years work, and they say that, well, you know, this is a valid measure for that. We can do that too. But I think at this point, to my mind, this is purely about opening access so we can get more students into our program. So this is, and to do it in about, we've been admitting over the years a few students who didn't have a bachelor's degree. We've also, by the way, admitted 2 students who came in with false documentation because they really wanted to get into our program. So they went down into the bazaar and they printed out a bachelor's diploma. And in one instance, I knew they were doing that. And so I said, do I call them on that? And in the other instance, I found out after they were in the program. And this is, to me, you know, just having a bachelor's diploma may or may not be proof of that you're qualified to join our master's degree. But this track that we're saying here is very concrete proof that you're qualified.
Right.
So related to that, I think you bring up a good point. And we know that, you know, if you're going to kind of require TOEFL tests, which we don't do, or, you know, undergrad transcripts, that at that point, best practice would also say go through one of those like you know, services that does the authentication of them. But a question as we're looking at this policy as a whole, and I think it is the type of thing HLC would look at, is this option available to American students? Or is this only something we are offering to international students partially because of the challenges in transferring? I would see this as less threatening to the existing HLC hierarchy if it doesn't look like we're undercutting our fellow community and undergraduate institutions.
Luke, I think for equity standpoint, we can't have a dual status between Americans and internationals. I just personally would feel uncomfortable with that. But I do think that I don't think HLC will have a problem with this. If I think the HLC actually might have a bigger problem if we create a dual situation. You never know on HLC, but I personally, in my position, would not support putting up two different standards for US and international.
And also, Luke, the logic is the same. If there's somebody in the United States who is, in her 30s or 40s, is doing amazing community work but doesn't have a bachelor's, and decides that she wants to do some, wants this master's, then the logic is the same whether she's American or Burundi. If she can perform at the graduate level, then and proves it after four classes or four courses, then I think that yeah, it would apply equally to an American or anyone else.
Yes, that American student would not qualify for any of the traditional financial leverages afforded to American students at that point.
Right.
So it's a long shot of entry when you could get a subsidized associate's degree down the road. I'm just, from a business model, you're not going to sell many of those.
Interesting. Yeah, we need to look into how this affects financial aid. Thanks, Luke. We hadn't quite gotten into that water yet. So
but
the other
still get their Siegel Award, for instance. In some cases, what Luke is talking about is federal guaranteed loans, but other financial aid, such as the Siegel Award for AmeriCorps, should function.
Yes, you could still get Siegel Awards.
Or Coverdale with Peace Corps.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I just have a question. I've been scrolling through trying to find the answer, and maybe it's there. I just haven't found it. Would these 4 courses contribute towards their master's degree transcript? So
yes, and if that's not clear, Chris, if you can review it, that's definitely should be in there.
Yeah,
that is the idea. Okay,
great.
great.
In there, yeah.
Okay. Yes, this would be the first 12 of their 36.
And clarification on the grade threshold. So it has to be a B or better. So does that include a B minus or only B?
Yep, good point.
3.0.
3.0. Oh,
Which
Laura,
would be what? A B minus, right?
That's a B.
No, it's a B.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Laura, please go ahead. Thank you for using your raise your hand feature.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what else could substitute for a degree. And if maybe you could look at references from from colleagues or from a previous employer or something about the quality of your work and your different qualities that you might have that show that you're very engaged in community. But that those letters would have to be sent with a notarized signature, which in the United States is very uncommon, but it's completely common in developing countries, I believe. At least it is here, because nobody believes that a document is real unless it's notarized. So it's not an unusual request to make.
Interesting. And the other point I was going to ask you, Laura, is Dan Robeson has talked about students in other parts of the world that have to do sort of a BA level thesis. And so he feels there's quite a few students out there who did their coursework for their BA but never finished this final thesis. And that hopefully this would be a way that they could feel like they were on their track to a master's degree, even not having completed their bachelor's.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yes, you have to at least where I am, and maybe in most of Latin America, you have to do a thesis at the bachelor's level to get your bachelor's degree. So something to look into. That would be country by country, what the requirements are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, well, any other? Yeah. Oh, Ruben, good job. Okay, Ruben, go ahead.
I have to say that I think it's a very good move in the right directions to facilitate access and trying to increase the number of students. That's it.
Yeah, and I think that's really the goal, is that our job in life is to help people get the education that they want, and that's going to help their community. And having this barrier of a bachelor's degree, we just feel like it would be nice to have an alternative to that, what feels like a very gated approach. All right, with that, we will take all your notes, and I'll get some more feedback from other faculty, and the Dean's Council will put together the final policy.
And then after Dean's Council brings it forward, I will bring it forward to the Board of Trustees.
Great. All right, so moving on to, oh, I never did the first part. So I wanted to tell you guys what's happening for fall 2020, and I'll put it in the chat so you can see the numbers and things. We have 37 students. I think I overestimated yesterday when I was estimating that number. 37 in Introduction to Community Change, 18 in Bottom-Up Economics, 18 in Strategic Communications for Change, and 9 in the Synthesis and Integration course. There's 15 new students. Some of those are master's students, some of those are certificate students. Certificate students just mean that they haven't, at this point, haven't actually been admitted into the master's program. So these are, if we pass this policy we just spoke about, this would be a policy that they could take advantage of if they didn't have a BA. Some of those students just happen to not know if they're ready. Like Luke said, some people just aren't sure they want to take that dive into a master's program. So this is our sort of opportunity for them to take one class at a time or 2 classes at a time to see if they're ready. The semester officially starts, well, the 15th of August is when the courses will open asynchronously, so students have the weekend to look at the material. The 17th of August is when we have our first Zoom sessions, and we're having a semester kickoff on Zoom August 12th at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So that's where all the faculty are spending their time, the teaching faculty this semester, getting ready for 10 days from now. So it's coming up quick. Any questions on that before I move on?
Yeah, sorry, Kelly. The kickoff event on August 12th, can you,
Yes.
What does that entail? Are we are available for questions, or is it just kind of a meet and greet?
Yeah, it's actually a good segue into the second section. So we have one of these every semester. It's basically trying to make everyone excited about being in a program and making them aware that they've started. And it actually practically started off as a check if people could get into Zoom. So yes, you're going to do, the teaching faculty are going to be there, and the students, the new ones and the returning students have been invited, or will be very shortly. We do introductions, both of the faculty and staff. Then they do sort of small, depending on the number of people that are there, introductions between the students. And then we're going to do an activity that's going to be based on this peer assessment best practice. So transitioning into this, does that clarify what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so what the feedback we've gotten from students in the program and also faculty who are, I think this teaching in this hybrid model is new for everybody, right? It's new, as you can tell from the way higher ed is going. There's very few people that teach in this model that we are in. And so one of the big places that we're trying to increase our, how effective we are is in these peer-to-peer group discussions. And we are trying it out in the Future Now course that Ruben's in. We've tried it out in different ways in the different courses. And what we're finding is we really need to start the semester off and start each student off with a good understanding of what good peer assessment is. And there's plenty of research and literature out there. And it's really a matter of boiling it down to what we think are the key ingredients that students need, especially in our environment, which is online and is multinational, multilingual. There's just some things that people need to keep in mind. So we will be distributing these notes to the students. And in one of the courses, we've actually asked them, I'm trying to find the page, sorry, page 6, the bottom of page 6, there's some sort of like norms. And so we ask them to actually acknowledge that they've read those norms and are going to sort of adhere to those norms. And so for the Zoom session, for the kickoff, Oliver, are you comfortable kind of letting everyone know what we're going to do for that event, or do you want me to?
Are you referring to the game we were talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've just been kind of brainstorming a couple of different team building style games that we can do digitally. So there's kind of a couple different routes that we've been talking about going with it. But the idea just being to essentially, just like you do team building in real life, force that to happen in an online classroom to help encourage these facilitation skills, and also just to break the ice in the groups, because students are going to be working with each other and to grow more comfortable. It's hard to kind of cover a lot of ground relationally in the digital classroom, so you can do that using some of these activities.
Right. So we're going to play a game, and then we're going to sort of debrief from the game, and then and hopefully that will build our institutional knowledge, both from the faculty perspective, but also from the student perspective, on best practice and continuing to build in this space. Yes, Ruben.
Just a comment about including games in the course. I know that this is to break the ice and very commonly used in the US. That's something that, in my experience, it doesn't work very well with some cultures, particularly with mature students. Playing games is not something that helps too much.
Also, Ruben, do you want to speak to your experience in these? You've sort of deep dived into these peer-to-peer learning environments. Do you want to give any sort of feedback so that?
Yeah, no, we need to be careful on this issue of culture. I give you an example. I was part of a leadership training course, and the facilitator started the training course for leaders. All the students or the participants were from foreign countries. And he started the leadership exercise, explaining how leadership emerged in a community of monkeys. Well, it was a big problem with the end of the program. So we need to be careful on when you include games, things like that looks something that, strange for some people.
I think Ruben's point is really important because we have two types of cultural bridges that are happening. One is the cultural, different parts of the world and different cultures that people come from, and the other one is the age culture. Because people who are more or less familiar with online learning environments. And so I don't have an answer, but I think Ruben has raised a big question, and I applaud the idea of finding an enjoyable process to bring people on. But the fact of the matter is that we want to come across as a serious university. We don't want to come across as, as a place that isn't commanding respect from our students. And I know that from my side, it means a lot to the students for me to give a formal lecture on a regular basis. They want to listen to their professor. Whereas a lot of things suggest otherwise in terms of what I'm trying to do with the courses. So I don't have an answer to this, but I'm really appreciative. I think that what Ruben's brought up, I think this is totally appropriate to be brought up in faculty. And we have to find answers for it.
So just to jump in on this, sorry, Kelly, I just remembered as I turned on my video, I was supposed to raise my hand. But because I think that I totally agree. I think the cultural issue and also the issues of age, we see it every year with, wide disparities in people's comfort levels with the technology, and that sets their real feelings towards the course for the entirety of it. And it's certainly 601, thinking about 601, which is where I've always seen it the most because everybody's new. But that being said, I have been in the era of COVID. I had some fun with Oliver coming up with saying, okay, what to effectively facilitate, whether it's a meeting or a class on Zoom, challenging some of your basic assumptions about the things you either need to do or don't need to do in terms of the timeline. Like I facilitated a statewide meeting last week where I was tasked with coming up with like facilitating introductions and everything. And we kind of did a flipped classroom model where I said, everybody, as you're logging on, enter all out into the chat, and like gave a kind of questionnaire out, because at that point, not normally in a meeting, does everybody get to write on the board at the same time. You can do that in Zoom. And then instead of, we said, just, don't tell us who you are when I call your name, because I'm going to call your name. So how many times do we need to hear your name? There were a whole other set of things about why you're excited to be here this morning. And so we launched into and it was very effective. And so I think that maybe we want to make sure that we're meeting something more like exercises versus games. And it's even some of that framing to a student. Someone says, I'm an adult, I don't want to do a game, but that this is a, socialization exercise and it's part of the virtual learning. Because you do, I think, get a much higher, you get a real difference in terms of people's engagement, turning, being attention to others. So I'd be interested to hear, I don't know, maybe one option is to hear a little bit more about what some of these activities were, or even, maybe you're going to send them out separate, because I can certainly see, I've come up with activities and then kind of said that wouldn't pass the culture test. And I've had other ones that absolutely would. So.
Thanks, Luke. Before I let Oliver and Laura talk, Erica has joined us. Erica, we were just saying our name and where we are. And if you have your mask handy, show that off. And then Oliver, please respond.
Sure. Sorry, I was late. I was on another meeting with a client. I'm in Dayton, Ohio. And I just got my new mask, my new Girl Scout mask this weekend. I was out at camp doing a training, and so social distance mask. And anything else there, Kelly?
That's mostly it. Thanks, Erica.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Oliver.
Yeah, I really appreciate that input, Ruben, because I think to Luke's point too, it's just going to guide how we frame a lot of that stuff. I think if it's framed as a practice or like a mock scenario or something like that, that might be a better approach. There is a lot of literature, peer-reviewed literature supporting some of these practices too. So I think if we can bring some of that to the table and approach it as academics, I think that could kind of support the case because it is good, and I think it could be an advantage. And yeah, there's going to be some meeting in the middle that we all need to do to become more comfortable. So yeah, we're going to go back to the drawing board and just make sure we're coming at it with the right approach. Appreciate it.
Laura?
Yes. Recently, I've been able to take 2 courses that were offered by the university that I'm working with in Peru, Cayetano Heredia University, which offered for its own faculty these courses. One was on university teaching methods, and the other one was on university teaching methods using virtual modalities. And so the 2 complemented each other very well. The second would not have been as good, as understandable, or as useful without the first, which for me opened huge doors that I had never been through before. In terms of how to structure a teaching session. And so each teaching session should have 3 parts. And the first part is the initiation of learning, where you are, and this is based on peer review literature as well and research on learning, where the first stage is always some sorts of exercises for motivation, exploration of the issue that you're going to be learning about in that session. So a session would be a 1 or 2 or 3 hour session. Looking at the problem, different types of, it could be like a pre-test, or it could be like a forum where people are, online forum, people are putting their, ideas, etc. So there's a lot of interactive types of what people you could call games, but they're really sort of introducing the topic and trying to get people realizing that they don't know as much as they think they might know about that topic. So, and then the second part being the, the actual content of the session, which could be your PowerPoint lecture or whatever, or, something more active. And then you follow up with the application or the transfer of the application of that knowledge, which some sort of, cognitive, putting together the pieces, and that could be a post-test, or it could be other things. And then evaluating the learning. So 4 parts really of each thing. But the first part, definitely you can't leave out. And that's where I think that you get into a lot of things like what you're talking about now is, the games, which are not really games, I think, and would apply to all ages. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, there's a lot more literature coming out on this area of the environment that's outside of the traditional, which I don't really like that term, but the traditional classroom approach to learning. And I'm very hopeful that there's going to be some great findings out there of ways to really come to the students where they are, which I think is another goal of our institution. We want to meet students where they are and give them what they want. So yeah, I did want to ask Andrea if she's still there. When I sent out this note, she responded that she's excited to use this in her course. So I just like to hear sort of your first thoughts or your final thoughts on how you're going to integrate this into your course design.
Well, yeah, and I think I wasn't as much talking about these exercises or games as much as the peer assist, just the idea, and it's sort of been integrated in this course since the first for a few years, but not really, it's been hard to actually implement it. And I think this year I'm really going to try to have the students each class. So, we'll do a lot of the learning throughout the week. And then it's a lot of this back and forth through their exercises of building up their own project. But then the idea this year is to really have about 2 students, now that I see that I have 18, about 2 students, 1 to 2 students guide the class each sort of facilitate the conversation each week. And also we have 3 distinct classes where they'll be doing presentations. So it's sort of like to where they are at that point. As they're building their projects, they'll be presenting, and then they'll have a peer facilitating, although I'll obviously be there in the background supporting this. But I appreciated a little bit of the guidelines that this document provided, where, like they're facilitating, but they're not expected to be the expert, and they're not being graded on their facilitation, but they get extra practice on this. And so there's actually guidelines for the students, but not only having the students themselves help facilitate on a weekly basis on sort of the recap of what we went over that week, but also facilitating the presentations on those 3 classrooms where we'll be doing the presentations.
Great. I'm glad it's helpful. I'd also like you guys to note that, like, because this is a Zoom session, although Daniel hasn't spoken out loud, he has typed a paragraph into the chat, which we all got to read. So there is this sort of multimodal. It does get a little overwhelming. I said noted. Did I actually read that? No, but I will read that after this meeting is over. So there is a little bit of classroom management. The little tidbit I got at a webinar recently was, you know, it is impossible to follow the chat. So maybe ask a student, and maybe vary who that student is, to keep their eye on that. And if there is something that hasn't been addressed that should be addressed, to make sure they bring that up. Like I'm about to ask Paula. Paula, is there anything in the chat that I should have responded to during this meeting?
No.
Oh. Maisie. Anyway, okay, so we have 10 minutes left.
I will say, Kelly, just related to that, I've been on several statewide, like 80, 90 person Zooms recently, where the whole conversation, they had them separated. So you had a chat moderator and you had a live person moderator, and the chat moderator was flagging comments in order to be allowed to speak, to have your microphone turned on. You had to put a preview of your comment in the chat window. And so that it was being structured like that. And so as we're scaling up class sizes, it was very, very effective.
Yeah, no, keep that in mind. I haven't given everybody 2 people in their courses, but I will if I need to. Great. Is there anything else we need to mention as we're all together? It's been really great to see you all. And I hope that we can all stay healthy and happy. Ruben, did you have something? Your hand went up and down.
Yes, I think that, you know, I have been in this course, in this experimental course. I think we already had 3 sessions with all the participants. And as I said before, I think all these changes are in the right direction. Experimenting with new approaches make us, I think it's very good. It's an excellent attempt to offer something different and more effective, and again, trying to decrease costs. But 3 sessions, 3 weeks, 4 weeks is not enough to really judge, you know, the value, or identify where are the strengths and the weakness of the approach. Overall, I think, again, we are going in the right direction. I still have some questions that we need to think about, issues that it will require more information from the different groups. For example, one is the ideal number of students in each of the groups. Clearly, too many students will not work. I have been in session with 3 colleagues or 4, and it works very good because there is enough time for everybody to participate, including those who do not like or are afraid sometimes to participate. So in a small group, it's much easier to get everybody involved. The issue of facilitation, to me, is a key one. For example, in the groups that I participated, there is, to me, one student that is really a good facilitator, and he read the instructions. Some others will require or either training or much more experience. The time management is a key one. One thing that works very good in our group is that the time was controlled not by the facilitator, but by another student. So it works very well. The one thing that we need to look at is this issue of switching from one facilitator to another in a group of 5 or 6, because we changed facilitator 4 times, in 1 hour. And the transition from one facilitation style to the other one creates some problems. So I don't know if this is going to work. Perhaps having only opportunity for 2 people to facilitate, or eventually only one, particularly in small groups, will be okay. I have been in contact with Kelly talking about the technology. I personally had some problems with the technology initially. It was frustrating to me not to be able to work with Padlets, for example. I tried to find out the instructions, and perhaps I was doing some mistakes. Finally, I went to Google and I asked for instruction to use Padlet, and I found one YouTube that was excellent, and in 20 minutes I solved the problem. And the day before I had been struggling for 2 hours, and I got frustrated. And now I see that Padlet is easy to use, and I think I am just exploring a few features, but I think the potential of the tool is much bigger. So I think we need to be careful not to make decisions based on information on 2 or 3 sessions. We need to go on testing, trying to get the feedback from the students, and see those issues that can be improved. Again, Kelly, I think you and your team are doing a good work on this. I'm happy.
Kelly, I don't have my hand raised, but I would like to make a brief comment. I want to draw everybody's attention to the rubrics in the document that Kelly shared on both activities and artifacts. These 2 rubrics were developed for the Future Now course to be used in peer review. But to my mind, it's something that I would really appreciate others on the faculty exploring and looking at. Because if we can get a standard means that actually gets down to something that we could have automated in the computer to quantify, this will allow us to, I think, achieve a certain amount of objectivity. It'll allow us to achieve a scaling up potential that Ruben has prioritized in many of his comments, especially when he was board chair. And so I just would like the faculty to especially look at the end of this document at the 2 rubrics and think about how you might be able to use those in your courses. Because if we can get this to work, it will be a real asset, I believe, to future course design.
Ruben?
One thing that clearly is not working, and this is the opinion also of other students, is the peer assessment at the end, when we are a very small group, 3 or 4 people, and the whole group is, for example, enrolled at 10, but we are only 4 participating. Because we are asked to assess only 3 members, usually they are not there. So in 3 sessions, I have been able to assess only 1 student. In the last sessions, my 3 students did not participate. So I think we need to find out how to correct that.
Sure. And I realize that we haven't actually explained what this experiential course is about. I think a lot of us know it because we've heard about it in different meetings, but the gist of it, without going into too many details, is that we have a course set up where the basis of the course is that there's materials on Moodle, and then the groups we've established groups at times that work for the students. Those students meet together on Zoom. They have the discussion questions that they've given beforehand. They have tasks they're supposed to take care of during the course of that live time. And then they do a peer assessment of each other on how well they did in those group discussions. including preparation. That's in the, as you can see in the rubrics. And then once in a while, they actually create something that then is also both presented to their group, and the actual artifact or evidence is again peer assessed by that small group. So Daniel and Oliver and all of us involved in that course aren't actually assessing them at all directly at this point. And this is part of the experiment. So it's pretty exciting. It's been great to have a bunch of really committed students. Ruben's a great example. If he had been just your regular student, week 2, he would have quit because Padlet was not working for him. And that is the experience that I have with other students. If we don't help them through the technology bump, they'll drop out. And so the only reason Ruben stayed in is because I sent him this nice email that said, please, please, please don't drop out. And so he didn't. But you know, just a reminder that the technology can be a barrier, but it doesn't have to be. And we just need to keep working on making sure that students appreciate that it's going to be, it might be a challenge, but it's worth it. And that's what I just constantly try to say in my messaging to students, and just giving you that as some feedback. So it's 11 o'clock. I don't know if Daniel has a final note. You're muted.
I would appreciate the faculty actually having a vote, Kelly, either this way or maybe online, so that this goes before into the official records with a vote of the faculty to endorse these experiments. As you noted that you're going to send it the asynchronous,
Okay.
but we need a vote.
Sure. So I would like a vote of confidence. Is that good enough? Or do we need a vote to go forward with these experiments?
I think that in terms of faculty, Chris drafted this document, Chris and Christy originally, and as a proposal from the faculty. And so the minutes of this meeting should read that this document was brought before the faculty, by the faculty, and was voted, those in attendance, or you can have it completely an online vote. But we need to have it as a motion that this came from the faculty have accepted it. Now it's proceeding to the president and to the Dean's Council, and from the Dean's Council is proceeding to the Board of Trustees. I really want to have the paper trail very clear on this.
Okay.
It would make sense for Chris to be the one to bring it forward as a motion.
Okay, since I wrote it, I can still bring it forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
I would like to bring forward the alternate track admissions policy. Sorry, let me get on so you can see me, that it's actually me talking. I would like to officially bring forward the alternate track admissions policy that will be modified slightly in the introduction for faculty approval.
Ruben seconded.
I did. I second.
Okay, so all in favor, feel free to just use your button there at the bottom, or in some way. Erica, you have to vote.
Andrea has to vote.
And Andrea, are you there?
I am. I just put yes.
Okay.
It doesn't look like that.
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Thank you. Oh, right, over there. Awesome. Okay, and then also I think we need some faculty permission to go forward with the experiment of the peer-to-peer learning. I'm trying to remember what I called it. Okay. That's not it. Okay, anybody?
When you say permission, just
I'm not sure, Daniel, just to go forward with the experiments that we have in place.
Right, right.
Okay, so you've heard the experiments, this Future Now course.
The point here for everybody's awareness is that the fact something is being happened, that it's occurring, that the faculty is aware of. So that the suggestion is not that something secret is happening. So the faculty has been briefed and is aware of this. And so we need to have a conscious statement, a statement of that consciousness.
Right. Do we all feel briefed?
Will all faculty who are here state that they are aware by a thumbs up that we are moving forward with this peer review practice?
Okay, perfect. Man, we got this down. Okay, thank you all very much. Sorry, the meeting went a couple minutes over. I can stay if anybody has questions for me, but otherwise, thanks so much. And you should get the minutes for this in the next couple weeks. Bye.